Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special presentation that we have for you today. This is our fireside chat, and my name is Lisa Levinson. I am the campaigns director for In Defense of Animals, and I am thrilled to introduce you to a couple of my colleagues. First off, we have Mary Easonsey. She's here today. Hi,
Hi,
Mary.
everybody.
She is with our development team, and we also have Katie Nolan, who is our wild animals campaigner. Hi, Katie.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here with you tonight.
Yeah, and actually, I have the honor of turning this conversation over to you, Katie, to introduce the topic and to get us, give us a little bit about what we're going to do today.
Yeah, definitely. So in just a second, I'll share my slides, but just again, I'm Katie. I'm the wild animals campaigner here at In Defense of Animals, and a little personal passion of mine is I just really care about smaller, lesser loved, unhuggable animals. Ever since I was a kid, I've really just made it my mission to help frogs and insects and lobsters and all sorts of critters that we sometimes forget about when we're advocating for animals. Obviously, there are a lot of really great animals out there, but we just want to make sure that no one's getting forgotten about. So this evening, we're going to be talking to you a little bit about some things In Defense of Animals is working on for smaller animals, some of our campaigns for those who are less focused on in the animal advocacy movement. So we're going to talk about why it's important to advocate for these animals, what In Defense of Animals has been working on, and then how you can get involved. So really excited to get started with you all. All right. So we're going to start out with amphibians. Amphibians are a personal favorite of mine. They bring me so much joy. I recently spoke at the Animal Vegan Advocacy Summit this year about amphibians. Those presentations are not up yet on YouTube, but when they are, I'll have a full talk available that you can hear. So I kind of just want to start out talking about why we should care about amphibians. So these are some photos of me at a local amphibian crossing. And just to preface this, I'm based locally in Vermont, so in the East Coast. And amphibian migrations are a little bit different on the East Coast than they are on the West Coast or in the South or different areas of the world. But amphibians do usually have some sort of seasonal migration. But before we dive fully into migrations, I kind of want to back up and talk a little bit more about amphibians and kind of why we should care about them. So there are over 8,800 amphibian species that we know of in the world. More are being discovered all the time. And 40% of amphibians are considered threatened or endangered, according to a study from 2023. So amphibian populations, specifically in the United States, are declining at a rate of around 4% per year, according to the US Geological Survey. So these animals are facing habitat destruction and reduction, both from direct human development and from climate change. There are also two fungal infections that are decimating amphibian populations. Chytrid fungus is one that's killing off frogs worldwide. And B-sal is a fungus found in Europe that affects salamanders. We also had a recent In Defense of Animals alert about this fungus to advocate for it to be for exotic species to be banned in the pet trade to stop the spread of this fungus. These diseases are often spread through animals being sent around in the pet trade, and these animals are meant to be in the wild, so we're trying to fight against that as well. Amphibians also breathe in part through their skin. So their skin's really porous, which means they're really sensitive to pollutants and toxins that are in the environment. And as if all of this wasn't enough, they also face threats from crossing roads. So during these seasonal migrations, amphibians will come out from their hibernation and they will migrate to vernal or seasonal pools to mate. And this often involves crossing busy roads because humans came along and we put roads right in the middle of these ancestral migration paths of amphibians, which is really unfortunate. So that's why there are local groups that go out physically, kind of in the evening at night when it's rainy and after the temperature is above 40 degrees, at least out east here. Those are the conditions that are perfect for amphibian migrations to start. So these animals will kind of wake up and start moving across the road. And what groups will do is they'll count all of the amphibians they see, count the species, count the number of live amphibians and the number of dead amphibians. And our goal is on the ground to help as many get across alive as possible, but also to count what species, how many are crossing at certain locations, to advocate for permanent culverts and infrastructure to be put in place. So I want to introduce you to a couple of my favorite amphibians. We've got some of their sounds here as well, so you'll get to kind of hear what they sound like. So to start, the American toad is a very common species of toad found throughout Canada and the eastern United States. They have rough, bumpy skin, and this year I moved some American toads at our crossing site in Vermont. This year they were the size of baseballs. They were this big. It was huge, really cool. So the American toad sound is causing a few little issues here, but let me see if I can get it to play a different way. The other ones are fine, but this one won't stop. So let me try, and if it goes on too long, I'll stop sharing. But you'll hear the American toad, and you'll also hear a spring peeper in that recording as well. All right, so that high trill was the American toad, and I've just stopped my share because our American toad friend is not wanting to stop singing on my computer. So I will reshare that up, and we will go back to our gray tree frog. Yeah, so our gray tree frog, you'll hear that really high trill noise. I actually just heard some the other night. They usually make that call during the mating season, but they continue to call all summer long, and scientists aren't exactly sure why. It could be some sort of, territorial disputes between frogs, like claiming your territory, but it also could just be for enjoyment. They like to sing. So they're another eastern United States frog. They're green to grayish and brown in color. They have webbed hands and feet, and these enlarged tips of each of their digit, they produce this adhesive fluid that allows them to better grip trees and and improves their climbing abilities. So these young tree frogs will generally remain near the forest floor, but as they get a bit older, they will transition to living in the forest canopy. And they have about a 7 to 9 year lifespan. So next we've got the spring peeper, and we kind of got a sneak preview of their sound with our toad friend. So their sound is pretty much it's just like their name. They make kind of a peeper sound, and they're kind of the sound of the spring, at least where I am. You hear them very often and very early on. They're one of the first frogs to emerge in the springtime. They actually have antifreeze, a type of antifreeze in their bodies in between their cells that allows them to almost freeze solid in the wintertime. So Because of that, they don't have to go as deep underground, and they're able to emerge pretty early. They're also pretty good climbers. They have pads on their feet to help them grip as well. And actually this spring, one of them kind of climbed up my pant leg during a migration night. So that's how I helped that one across the road, kind of hitched a ride on my pant leg. So that was fun. They're pretty tiny. They're only about an inch long. They have this characteristic X pattern on their back that you can kind of see here. And next up, we have our red-legged frog. I wanted to put in someone from the West Coast. So this is our California red-legged frog. They're named for their characteristic red abdomen and back legs. I'm not as familiar with these guys, but you can find them outside of LA and in California. These frogs are classified as a threatened species, primarily due to habitat loss and destruction. So here's what they sound like. And that's the noise, that lower, more subtle throat sound. Awesome. Yes, there are tons and tons of frog species out there. If you're interested, you can look up their calls and kind of get to know the frogs in your area. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the goals of doing these amphibian crossing programs is to get permanent culverts put in. So this is an example. It's actually in Moncton, Vermont. This is a really successful culvert that was put in that amphibians use. This is kind of a sped up video of some salamanders and frogs using this culvert. You can see the kind of triangle shapes are frogs, and these long ones are salamanders. A lot of spotted salamanders. Really cool. So we'll move into a little bit more about what In Defensive Animals has been working on. One thing you can do to kind of get involved is you can rep our gear. We have this awesome Amphibians rock shirt. I'm actually wearing mine right now. They're pretty sweet. And everyone has access to our 25% off coupon code, Frogs Rock. That's the code. So if you're interested in buying one of our shirts, you can go onto our store online and check those out. They're really cute. Another thing we did recently is we held a frog and toad drag story hour, which was super fun. So we had two local drag queens in Vermont. They came, we partnered with a local sanctuary in Vermont, a farm sanctuary, and there were families and their kids, and we came and sat, and the drag queens read stories that were all related to frogs. We read some frog and toad stories, if you know the characters Frog and Toad. And we actually read a children's book about an amphibian crossing program, which was really cool. And then we played a little kids frog trivia game. And then this is me pictured on the right with one of the farmed animal residents at the sanctuary who kind of just wandered through the story hour from time to time. So it was very fun. We also have these migration season pamphlets that are available on our store as well. If you're interested, they have a lot of really great suggestions for how to get involved in local crossing programs and how to start your own. If you're interested in starting your own, we'd love to hear from you. Please get in touch. And some other ways you can help, as I mentioned, frogs have really porous skin, so you can choose eco-friendly products that, won't end up in our waterways. Reducing your carbon footprint in general is really great, and one of the best ways to do that is eating vegan. You can join or organize your own amphibian crossing program, create amphibian-friendly habitats in your own backyard with native plants, ponds, shelter. Avoid using pesticides, herbicides, and chemical fertilizers in your yard. Again, frog's skin is really, really sensitive to those types of products. Don't support the trade in amphibians for pets, food, or dissection. Again, that is how these really, really horrible diseases are spread. And those amphibians that are used as pets or food or dissection, they really suffer horribly. So don't support those industries. You can advocate for the protection of wetlands, forests, other key habitats, get in touch with your legislators. That goes for all of the things we're going to talk about today. If you're passionate about something we're talking about, definitely just reach out to your local representatives and have a conversation and just share with them that you care about frogs or salamanders or turtles or fish or whatever animal it is that you're really passionate about. And lastly, you can educate others and support policies that protect amphibians and their ecosystems. All right, so we're going to pivot a little bit, and now we're going to talk about insects. So again, kind of to establish why we're here talking about insects. So I'd hope we're all kind of animal lovers here. I know it's a bit harder to make a case for why insects matter. I personally am extremely passionate about ants. They're one of my favorite animals, but I can understand why insects are a bit more tough to get people to relate to. So I'm kind of going to go through all the stages of caring about insects. So on the very basic level, insects directly benefit humans. So insects, they pollinate our food. There's somewhere estimated, I think it's 1 in 4 bites of food is thanks to an animal pollinator. And about 35% of the world's food crops depend on animal pollinators. So if you like to eat, which I'd hope is all of us, if you eat food, you can thank a pollinator, and a lot of pollinators are insects. All right, so hopefully we're all starting to care about insects. But if not, if you care about the environment, then you should care about insects. So they're part of the food web. We just talked about frogs. If you like frogs, then you should like insects. Frogs and salamanders and other amphibians rely on insects as part of their diet. So insects keep ecosystems running smoothly. They help cycle nutrients. They help process waste in the ecosystem. They help aerate our soils. They do a really good job of keeping our environment healthy. All right, so next level is sentience. So hear me out. There's a lot of new studies that indicate that insects are sentient. So ants will perform acts of altruism. They'll sacrifice themselves for the greater good of the insect community. We'll see a picture of weaver ants in a bit. They form chains with their body to help other ants kind of climb and harvest food. There are studies about how fruit flies have active sleep. So kind of like how we have REM sleep and we dream. Fruit flies have similar types of sleeping patterns to humans. And there are a lot of really cool studies about bumblebees showing that they have sentience and intelligence. They're able to recognize and differentiate different styles of paintings. They play. So insects are seemingly sentient from a lot of research that's being done. And then lastly, just intrinsic value. I think animals just have a right to exist just because they exist, not because what they provide for humans or the ecosystem, even though they do provide a lot. So here's a really cute video, a little GIF. This is the study I was referring to about bees playing. So these are bumblebees. They're actually rolling around these balls just for fun. There was no food incentive or anything in this research study. They just kind of put some bumblebees in here with some balls, and bumblebees were just kind of playing with them for fun. So really cool. And here are a couple photos of ants. So these are the weaver ants I was referring to. They are forming chains with their bodies, and this ant you can kind of see is crossing over top of this chain. They're going back and forth to harvest leaves and get back and forth from their nest. And then this is an image of a leafcutter ant carrying a leaf. Leafcutter ants actually farm. So what they do with these leaves is they cut them and carry them back to their nest. And then they grow and harvest a fungus on these leaves, and that's what they eat. Pretty cool. So this is kind of getting into sort of what we at In Defense of Animals are doing for the insects. So last year, I spoke at the Animal Vegan Advocacy Summit. about insects. So if you're enjoying this segment of our presentation, there's actually a longer version on YouTube. You can check that out. We have a blog about it as well, where I dive into a lot more detail about insects and how we can help them. I also gave an insect philosophy talk. There's something called Philosophy Week in Vermont, and I gave a presentation to explore ethics around why we should care about insects. You can see this picture on the left with all the chairs. If you look closely, there's these little pictures of insects on popsicle sticks. So I made this really fun game where I printed out all of these pictures of insects who live in Vermont and wrote little descriptions on the back. And we played a game to kind of get to know these insects. So the people who are attending the talk sort of had more of a personal relationship with these bugs before going into it and talking about why we should care for them, which was really fun. So now we'll get into what you can do. Again, you can create some native habitat, plant some plants, create pollinator gardens. Don't consume insects or their byproducts, such as honey, silk, and carmine. It's like a red dye that's in a lot of food. And then catch and release insects in your home. That's a really important one. If you're able to coexist with insects in your home, great. Also, there's a lot of great bug catchers out there. I just use a jar with a piece of paper. We actually have some ants in our kitchen right now. So this kind of gets into this next section about resolving conflicts. So deter insects with natural repellents. A lot of insects don't like lavender, cinnamon, thyme, soybean oil, eucalyptus oil. Prevention is key. No crumbs in the kitchen. That was our fault. So we, with our ants, we had to remove all the crumbs. The ants mostly went away after that, but what I did was spray a little bit of vinegar and not touch any of the ants, but kind of wipe down starting at the far end of the counter and kind of work my way following the ants as they would move back towards the window where they were coming in from. And then we could seal up the area that they were coming in. And then turn lights out at night. So we've got underwater animals, crustaceans, fish, and cephalopods we're going to get into a little bit. So we'll start again establishing why we care about lobsters and crustaceans. So there's also, again, been a lot of research recently about lobster and crustacean sentience. Crustaceans are capable of feeling pain, feeling stress. They react to negative stimuli. They'll rub wounds and injuries with their antennae. They have complex nervous systems, and they exhibit behaviors that suggest they experience fear and discomfort. So in the wild, lobsters can live around 100 years, but they're caught at around 7 years old. In tanks, they're usually kept in overcrowded, barren spaces in grocery stores where they're not fed for weeks or even months. And then they're often boiled alive when they're killed for food. And lobsters cannot go into shock. So that means they feel the full pain of the experience of being boiled alive, which is really, really unfortunate. So a little bit about what we're doing to help the lobsters, help the crustaceans in general. So we recently had a mock lobster demonstration, a cooking demonstration. So we celebrate lobsters every year on September 25th. It's National Lobster Day. So we held a cooking demo and learned about how to make tasty alternatives to lobster. And I recently put this into practice with some friends. We celebrated a new holiday called Crustacean Compassion Day, where we tried out these recipes. We made some mock lobster rolls and played some crustacean trivia games, learned more about crustaceans, crabs, shrimp, and had a really good time. We have a blog that was published recently that kind of goes through how you can host your own event for Crustacean Compassion Day. We've got a lot of resources. So if you're interested in this, we'd love for you to get involved and send us your pictures if you throw an event. So again, you can educate others. You can sign our alert. We actually have an active alert advocating for grocery stores to end the sale of live lobsters. So that way there won't be lobsters experiencing life in these barren tanks, not being fed, being boiled alive. If we can kind of get grocery stores to cut this off at the root, then we can prevent a lot of lobster suffering. So please sign our alert. You can choose vegan alternatives, host your own Crustacean Compassion Day event or your own National Lobster Day event. We also have these pamphlets that you see have Compassion for Lobsters. They're available on our website, on the store. You can download them. You can order a pack of them if you're interested. Something interesting we also do is we have an Ending Lobster Boil fundraiser campaign. It's very specific to advocating to Episcopal churches to end lobster boil fundraisers. So if you're a member of an Episcopal church and you're interested in getting involved, we would really love to hear from you. We're looking for a lot of help in helping these churches to transition away from lobster boil fundraisers. So next, I'm going to talk to you about Respect for Fish Day, which is coming up on August 1st. We pick a kind of different theme every year. So this year we've got a fish's eye view. So we're kind of talking about how fish experience the world and what the world is like from a fish's eye view. We're trying to get to know these individual fish and what they go through. And one of the focuses this year is on bottom trawling, which is a horrible practice, and we have an active alert out about it that you can sign. So a little bit more about how to get involved with Respect for Fish Day. You can see a lot of these also on our website. So you can attend an in-person event. We have two, one in Marin County and one in Los Angeles, both on August 1st. There'll be fun fish facts, trivia, compassionate outreach. So we invite you to join those if you're in the area. You can sign our alert to help end bottom trawling in Alaska. We have a guide for how to write a letter to the editor on our website as well, if you're interested. And on August 1st, we'd love for you to post on social media. You can use the hashtag Respect for Fish. You can post photos, you can share a story about your connection to fish or what you did to get involved in the day. A couple more things if you're interested in really getting involved and you want to set up your own table or host your own event or protest or demonstration on August 1st or Respect for Fish Day, please get in touch. We have materials. We'd be really, really excited for you to host your own event. So let us know if we can support you in doing that. You can also host a vegan fish tasting, kind of like our Compassionate Lobster Day, sort of mock lobster events. And again, always advocating and talking to your legislators and asking for policy changes that will protect fish. And I would be remiss if I did not mention octopuses. I don't have a ton to share here, but there's been a lot of recent developments that we'll be sharing coming soon. So we've done a lot of work in the past to advocate against octopus farming. So octopus farming is an industry that does not yet exist, but some countries, including the United States, are actively trying to start octopus farming, which is horrible. All creating a new type of factory farming when we're actively trying to fight against the already existing types of factory farming. These octopuses would suffer incredibly in tanks, isolated. It's really tough to feed octopuses. They're actually carnivores, so this would also cause a lot of fish to die and be killed as food for these octopuses. And they're very, very intelligent animals, and they would lack stimulation in these small pens that they'd be kept in. So in the Canary Islands off of Spain, there was an attempted octopus farm. Groups, including ours, were able to halt that octopus farm from moving forward. And now Spain is actually considering legislation to ban octopus farming, ban all future attempts to start octopus farming, which is huge. So there will be an alert from us coming out soon. So keep an eye out for that. And then the United States also has the Octopus Act. This is its second time being introduced into the legislature. So we're keeping an eye on that bill as well. There's a chance that maybe we can ban octopus farming in the United States too. And with that, believe that's all I have for you. I think we can open it up to questions and just kind of have a conversation and a dialogue about all of these different animals and what we're wondering about them.
That was great, Katie. Thank you. I saw some really great questions in here, so now I have to scroll to try to find them. Uh, escargot is also a no, so we love snails.
Yeah, we do love
Um,
snails. A fun fact about snails, I didn't know they can be left shelled or right shelled. So the way that they kind of come out of the shell, and then they need to mate with a
the
snail that is also
bird.
either left or right
Yeah.
shelled. It's pretty cool.
Yes. All right, so here's one. The question was about fleas and ticks and the common fly. Um, Basically the conversation that we were having before
Yeah.
about certain animals being prioritized over others, like the flea or the tick. You know, we have anti-flea and anti-tick stuff that we put on our outdoor animal companions. And it's difficult because you're trying to protect your animal companion, but can you do it without hurting other animals? And that's the question is, I don't know if that exists yet, but maybe it could exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the question. It's a really tough one, and
Yeah.
I would love to say that we have the answer and the solution, and we don't. Our
Mhm.
group was actually internally just discussing this issue, and and whether or not we should be more outspoken about advocating for fleas and for ticks and for these animals that can, if you don't get your animal treated for worms, they can die potentially. So it's really tough. We don't want to prioritize one animal over another, but yeah, I think about it's so hard. We can't really exist without contributing to the suffering of others. I think just choosing to drive to the grocery store, to get in your car and drive, the amount of insects that you're hitting with your car, you're saying that me getting in my car and driving right now is more important than X amount of lives that I might be killing from driving in my car. And obviously, living in our society today, we have to be able to kind of balance existing and causing as little harm as possible. And I think that's what it's more about, is kind of reaching towards this ideal of how can we lessen suffering and how can we try to reduce the suffering we're causing.
Mhm.
And I do know that there's some research being done about um, I think it was, instead of killing fleas, it's almost like a flea birth control. So it
Yeah.
prevents their eggs from hatching. And then fleas, I guess their normal lifespan is like 2 to 4 weeks, and then the adults will kind of die off naturally.
Right.
So that is an option. It's being explored. But I do also understand the argument of, our companion animals who we know and love. You're not gonna want to let them suffer from, if they have hookworms or heartworms or some kind of
Mhm.
worm that is very dangerous to them. So it's a conversation that we want to welcome people to have more of, because we're
Right.
only going to kind of figure out solutions and work our way forward by talking about it.
Completely agree with that one. I see we have a raised hand. Let's try to see if we can bring that person forward. Maybe did they say something in the Q&A? We have lots of good stuff in the Q&A now. Lisa, are
Yeah,
you going to say
so much.
something?
Yes, I was going to say let's do the Q&A.
Yeah.
And
And I see Chris's comment after watching Leon the lobster on YouTube. I know a lot of people have seen that. I don't even think I could eat vegan lobster. I will say that I do love a good like vegan burger every now and again, or like a vegan mock meat. I did also struggle eating the vegan lobster. I was like, I don't know, I don't like that it used beet juice to dye it sort of red to kind of make it look like lobster. And I was so freaked out. I was like, can we make a batch that isn't dyed red? I want it to look like tofu. So I completely understand there.
Yeah, I love tofu just the way it is. It can just Stay tofu. Yep. Someone is chiming in about the flea contraception being available in Canada. So it's like an option now. That's pretty cool. All right.
And I think CJ put a great question in the chat. Why do you think banning octopus farming is getting so much traction when we can't get much support for banning lobster or fish farming? And how do we get this kind of support for other sea critters? That's a really, really great question. And
good.
kind of also what we're trying to explore in this webinar is how can we advocate better for these other animals who aren't really talked about? I think octopus farming has really gained traction because of that movie, My Octopus Teacher, which I know Erica mentioned, and I think a few other people have mentioned as well. It was a really beautiful movie if you haven't seen it, about a person who forms a relationship with an octopus. I think people perceive octopuses as having really high intelligence. And that's another reason why they're getting a lot of traction. But I also think that I think too, it's, you know, there's a lot of fighting against culture when it comes to fishing and lobster fishing in particular. It's very, very rooted and ingrained in certain areas of our country, unfortunately, whereas octopus farming hasn't established itself yet. So it's a lot easier to stop something before it started, whereas people have been eating lobster for a long time. So it's a bit more of a difficult battle. But I find that just talking about these animals, talking about how awesome they are, that lobsters can live to be 100 and they have these really amazing underwater experiences and lives, and just sharing that with as many people as possible, I think is getting us there and helping us to get to the point where maybe we can stop these other types of farming too.
That was such a great answer, Katie. I just want to make sure I get this right. The discount code for the t-shirts is Frogs Rock in all caps. I'm not sure if caps is important, but it's in all caps here.
Yeah, I don't think it's important, but I've always,
I
just
don't
in
know.
case, I always use
Just
the
in
all
case,
caps.
it's in all caps. And let me give you guys the link to the store one more time. As soon as I find it. Here we are. All right, what other questions do we have? I think that the concept that we were talking about a minute ago about having to balance all of the pieces and understanding that we don't have all the answers yet and that we have to keep exploring, keep talking about it in order to reach whatever unknown solution that exists in the future, so that once it exists, we'll be able to find it because we'll be asking the right questions. So I think it's important to understand that it might be idealistic, but at the same time, sometimes idealism is like a methodology to reach the thing that feels like it's unreachable. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
I think you need it. Oh, someone wants to know, how do I get voles to leave my home without harming them?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a good
That's always
one.
the question. I don't know as much about voles and kind of burrowing rodents. I know that they can be kind of a pain. I don't know if anyone else.
Carpenter
Can
bees.
mention,
Lisa.
so voles, we actually are having some concerns about voles in
Mhm.
this in nationwide, that we are seeing a reduction in voles and moles, and there might be uh, just like in some of the bats, there's a
Mm,
type of an illness going around. I think the same thing is happening with the voles. So even though they are perhaps difficult to live with, they are uh, really
They're
important little creatures, and we
they're rare now,
are
aren't
at
they?
risk of losing them. So
Oh.
you may try reaching out to. There are some people who find an expertise in exclusion practices. For example, if you have mice or other animals that you like but may not want to share your home with, there are some companies that specialize in these exclusion practices, which are non-lethal, and that way they can help you um, learn and orient your home or your outdoor area. Um, so that's one suggestion. You can also contact maybe the local wildlife rehab and ask them a little bit about this, because I have worked in that field and have some wonderful allies there, and they often spend quite a bit of time talking to people on the phone about alternatives, because the other option is to bring them in to the wildlife center or other situations. So I would suggest the wildlife rehabbers.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for chiming in.
Yeah, sure. Mhm.
I know there are a couple other questions I was seeing that are really good in the chat. There was one, someone was asking about the amphibian crossing. What draws amphibians into the culvert instead of onto the road? Which is a really good question. So the culvert also includes this kind of concrete barrier that goes along both sides of the road and then like curves around at the end. So the amphibians, instead of going up over the road because there's concrete, they did a lot of studies and tests because the tree frogs and the peepers, since they're climbing species, some still will try to climb the concrete, but the path of least resistance is through the culvert. So a majority of them do end up going through the culvert. And if they miss the culvert or come in at a different area, those concrete barriers will kind of guide them to the culvert. And if they go the wrong direction, the curved end will sort of circle them back around and send them back to the culvert. And that's how they'll get across the road.
Those must have been really interesting studies. It was like
Yeah.
approach the object. What do you do? Do you go around it? Do you go over it?
Yeah, like a lot of scientists just kind of sitting outside in the rain watching frogs, which
Maybe.
sounds pretty cool.
Oh,
Oh,
there's more in the chat. So we're just both looking at it.
yeah. And there's another question. I see someone said in Europe, a law is in progress, adaptation to create a positive list of animals that can be allowed as pets. Does such a list exist in the USA? And in the United States, we do restrict what types of animals can be kept as companion animals. I don't think as stringently as other countries, but we're definitely working on it. So that alert that I mentioned that we did have, it since closed. It was like a comment period with a certain window of time, but it was to advocate for certain species of salamanders to not be able to be traded and to be sold as companion animals in the United States. So we're definitely, I think, helping to build a list so that these animals are not sold and kept in captivity.
Now, we may want to, we can give a try for, I think we've got Peter here, I believe, who has a little question. So let me see if we can go ahead here. I'm going to unmute you for a moment. Peter, if you have a question. Yes.
I'm unmuted.
Yes, you are.
Yay.
Hi. Yes, I'm calling from Florida, and this is a practice. I think it's pretty environmentally aware of Florida, but certain places, condominiums, whatever, they're on the beach, are required during mating season or egg laying season for the tortoises, Ridley tortoises, but other amphibians, that the floodlights have to be amber. I don't know if you know about this. They're amber because when these turtles emerge and they're trying to head back to the sea, if they have white floodlights, they'll head toward the building.
Yes.
And they don't want that to happen. So it's a strategic thing that they do during those seasonal times. They have to use amber lights so that they head to the water where they belong. And I'm wondering, there are other people who can just use that knowledge for their own home. If you have a floodlight in your yard and can you change it to an orange light at the right time of year so that you don't confuse the amphibians? What do you think?
Thank you for sharing this, Peter. That's incredible. And it's something I love to talk about is light pollution because it does affect so many different animals. And thank you for bringing that up. I know I've heard a lot of really horror stories about, baby turtles will wander into the road instead of the ocean. And it's really, really detrimental to their populations. And the same for birds when there are lights, big buildings lit up, whole flocks of birds who are migrating will end up hitting windows and having these building collisions and die. And it goes for insects too. Moths are attracted to light. You see it when we're driving on the roads. Honestly, my ultimate dream is to be able to come up with some sort of device that can kind of like go over our lights when we're driving and kind of catch bugs or like keep them in a vacuum and we can release them after we're done driving or something. It's like I sometimes won't drive at night in the summer because it's just so devastating. All of the moths that fly to your light and die. I wish I could just kind of catch them all or kind of deter them. So I'm thinking on it. But yeah, I think light pollution is a really good conversation to be having. We can do a lot just by dimming and turning off our lights for so many different species.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did see another comment in the chat too that I love about bee farming. I actually didn't know that the queen bee's wings were clipped so that she doesn't fly away. That's a really sad thing. Another note on bee farming, a lot of people who keep bees keep European bee species, and not that there's anything inherently wrong with European bees, but the native bees in America are declining. And so European bees are actually worse pollinators. They're more efficient, so they produce more honey, which is why people use them, but they do a worse job at pollinating our native plants and flowers. So they outcompete a lot of native species, and they also spread disease. And because they're kept in these cramped areas that are essentially little mini factory farms for bees, they will spread disease and they get sick and they're suffering, and then they spread those illnesses to our wild bee populations, which are in decline. And there's a question about noise pollution affecting marine animals other than whales. And I'm not sure about that, but I'd imagine that animals with hearing capabilities underwater, I'm sure, are affected by noise pollution. I know lobsters in particular, I don't know that they necessarily hear, but they feel and can communicate through like vibrations and like striation noises. So I think noise pollution could definitely interfere with that for sure.
I know the answer to this one. We have Terry asked, when my octopus teacher said they only live about 1 year, and I think that's correct. I think for the Great Pacific octopus, it's 3 years, but the smaller ones that live more near the shore, it is 1 year. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
I've heard some lobsters, geez, I got lobsters on the mind. I love lobsters, but I think some octopus species can live up to 4 years or so.
Mm.
There was one instance where scientists recorded this octopus guarding her eggs for like, I don't remember the exact number of years.
It was an absurd number of months.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was
I
a
know the
long time.
paper we were talking about.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty accurate. They only live a year, a couple years kind of
Yeah,
thing.
but it's because like my octopus teacher, it was like one of those little species that in Europe, and I don't know all the species or anything, but I know that it was the giant octopus that lives for 3 years, and it's a little guy. Because I watched that show too, My Octopus Teacher.
Actually, guilty confession, I have not watched the whole thing. I know what happens in the end, and I'm gonna watch it eventually, but it's just too
Yeah.
sad to think about. So
Yeah. I think that's okay.
yeah.
That's allowed.
So let's see if there's any other questions we want to ask, and we are getting close to the time for us to close out our webinar today, our fireside chat, which is really
Please
special.
love watermelon. That's great.
Our kind of our underdog fireside chat, our lesser loved animals.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us. And really, I'm so passionate about these smaller animals. So if you'd like to get more involved or just get in touch or share your stories about small animals or what you do to help them, we'd love to hear from you. So I can put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach
I
out.
mean, the info at, I'll get them to you. So
Okay, perfect.
yeah,
That's probably better.
info@idausa.org. I'll put it in there again, and I'll make sure they get to the right person.
Yes, and thank you so much, Mary, for putting the links to these various alerts into the chat, and that way, everyone here, you can take action if you haven't already signed them for these lesser loved animals. I want to take a moment also to, thank Mary for being so attentive to the chat, and also for Katie, this amazing presentation with all of the frog trills and sharing your personal stories as well of really helping these animals on the front lines. Yeah, we
Yeah,
so
definitely.
appreciate it.
And thank you all for being here, for joining us. And thank you, Lisa, for facilitating and for guiding us through the
Oh,
presentation.
well, it's my pleasure. I have a love of lesser loved animals myself. So it's really very special. We're happy at IDA um, to be really helping these animals and defending the underdog. And even if the underdog is an amphibian and and also a cephalopod. So we really appreciate you tuning in and maybe learning more about these little creatures, and hopefully you can share some of our resources and inspire others to be kind and compassionate to these lesser loved animals. So we really appreciate everybody joining us today. We hope that you'll join us again for our next talk, and thank you all for being here.
Yeah,
And
thank you
stay
all.
tuned for Respect for Fish Day, which is on
Yes,
August 1st. Wonderful.
right around the corner.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.